All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So today we've got this stack of sources, and we're digging into something really quite unsettling. It's from the world of American folklore. We're looking at a legend, but one that sort of jumped the fence from just a campfire story into this really deep-seated fear in a rural Pennsylvania community.
Yeah, it's more than just a ghost story.
Exactly. It feels like a living cautionary tale, really rooted in this shared sense of dread. The sources we're pulling from today, they include local historical archives, some oral histories collected from residents over the years, and even a couple of sociological studies that look at community trauma and how legends form.
Which is fascinating in itself.
It is. So we're here to unpack the child-eating man. Even the name.
Yeah.
It just sends a shiver, doesn't it? Even decades later. Okay, let's really get into this. How a legend can start to feel horrifyingly, undeniably real.
Well, it's a really powerful example, isn't it? How actual fear, real unaddressed fear, can almost etch itself into the identity of a place, of a community.
Yeah.
And what's so striking about this child-eating man, looking through our stack here, is how it apparently shifted from just these whispered worries into something people genuinely believed, almost like a tangible threat. We're not just talking folklore in a simple sense. We're digging into what some of these sociological texts call a phantom menace.
A phantom menace.
Yeah, basically a threat that's so pervasive, so elusive, it actually starts to shape how everyone thinks, the collective consciousness. So our mission today really is to carefully pull apart the core pieces of this legend based on what these different sources tell us and try to grasp the power it holds and maybe why, for some people, it still feels very much alive.
Okay, so to understand that power, we need to go back to where it all started, this really chilling origin. Our sources, they paint this picture, a pretty stark one, of a quiet, normal rural town in Pennsylvania, early 1970s.
Right, idyllic almost.
Totally. Picture the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, kids play outside till the streetlights flick on. A small town America, right? But then, something shattered that peace. Children started disappearing.
And that's the catalyst.
That's the catalyst.
Yeah.
The initial reports we found, like in the local police files and old newspaper clippings, they talk about isolated incidents at first. But pretty soon the pattern became clear. A series of vanishings, each one just more terrifying. Our historical documents, they note this really unsettling lack of anything.
Yeah.
No trace, no evidence, no forced entry, no signs of struggle, just, what neighbors described as the echo of terrified screams they swore they heard in the night.
Wow.
And the oral histories we have, they capture how fast this creeping dread just took hold. Parents who felt totally safe before, suddenly locking doors, keeping kids practically tied to their side. But even with all that, the disappearances kept happening, just leaving this vacuum. No answers, just more and more panic.
And that vacuum, that void of explanation, it's absolutely critical here. Our sociological studies really highlight this. It becomes fertile ground for legends to grow.
Makes sense.
Yeah, when the official channels, the police, when they can't give concrete answers, can't provide closure for something so traumatic, especially kids disappearing, the human mind just naturally tries to fill that gap.
You need some explanation.
Exactly. It's not just about coping, though that's part of it. It's a fundamental psychological need, really, to make sense of the senseless, to put some kind of story into the chaos. So the fear, instead of fading, it actually gets stronger. It solidifies. And without a known culprit, the community starts to, construct its own explanation, often pulling on these really old, deep-seated fears we all kind of have.
Primal fear.
Primal fears, exactly. And these early stories, even though they're terrifying, they offer a kind of control, almost, a way to name the threat, even if the name itself just makes it scarier.
And that's exactly what happened. That vague dread started to take shape, to become this very specific, horrifying figure. The child-eating man.
The name itself.
It's brutal. And our oral history sources, they show how the whispers weren't just about what was happening anymore, but who was doing it. People started piecing together this image, and it was consistent, terrifyingly so. They described him as tall and gaunt, with eyes sunk deep into his skull.
Almost skeletal.
Yes, like a ghost or something embodying starvation and shadow. But the details that really made this legend stick, they were about his behavior. Very specific, very unsettling stuff. He was said to walk only at night, barefoot, dragging a sack behind him.
Barefoot.
Yeah, that detail, right? So secretive, almost animal-like movement. And the sack, obviously ominous, it just screamed predatory intent. And then came the really grotesque part, the detail that made it impossible to forget.
What?
Inside that sack, people claimed, in hushed voices, were bones too small to belong to adults. Tiny bones. So this wasn't just some generic boogeyman. It was a figure built meticulously from the community's absolute deepest fears about kids, about innocence being violated.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it, how those really vivid, awful details become like cultural anchors.
Yeah.
Memory aids. They make sure the legend isn't just remembered, but passed on with this horrifying clarity, generation after generation.
Yeah.
Our sources, especially the ones looking at folklore, they really dig into the power of that kind of imagery. The gaunt look, that taps into ancient fears, scarcity, predators, hunger.
Right.
The barefoot thing suggests stealth, like he's outside normal human ways.
Yay.
But it's the sack of tiny bones. That's what truly locks in the terror.
It's undeniable.
It is. It's not just horrific, it's symbolic.
Yeah.
It stands for the ultimate violation, right? Childhood completely consumed, leaving only the starkest, most awful proof of loss. These aren't just random scary bits. They feel almost deliberately chosen, maybe subconsciously, to maximize the dread. To make the legend into something specific, something tangible in people's minds. It gives a name, a face, to the disappearances they couldn't explain otherwise, turns this general anxiety into a focused, gut-level terror they could actually talk about, even if they couldn't, confront the source itself.
And you could imagine initially the authorities, they reacted how you might expect, right?
Right.
Especially with rumors this wild flying around.
Skepticism, definitely.
Total skepticism. The old police reports, newspaper accounts from back then, they show officials pretty much dismiss these rumors as hysteria. Which, okay, maybe understandable when you're hearing tales of a literal child-eating man. It sounds like pure fantasy, not police work. But then, something happened. A turning point. It shifted the whole story from just folklore towards something horrifyingly, disturbingly real. An old, rundown farmhouse kind of isolated on the edge of town was finally searched. And what they found inside? Well, according to our archival records, it shocked even the most experienced investigators.
Okay, this is where it gets concrete.
Very concrete.
Yeah.
Imagine walking into this derelict place, probably expecting nothing, and finding, police reports describe scratched drawings on the walls, stick figures, of children, but with their mouths sewn shut.
Oh, God.
Yeah, just this silent scream on the walls. And then they went to the basement, and it got worse. They found claw marks leading to a trap door, gouged deep into the floorboards, like someone desperately trying to get out or maybe keep something in. Definitely looks like it. But the real horror was underneath. That trapdoor, it didn't just open to a cellar. It opened into this narrow, dark tunnel, dug into the earth. And what our sources say they found at the end of that tunnel, it's just chilling. Cages.
Yeah.
Tiny cages. Yes. Rusted, clearly old, but unmistakably built for children. So this wasn't whispers anymore. These were real, physical, deeply disturbing clues.
And this is where that idea of ostension in folklore really clicks in, something a few of our academic sources explore.
Ostension. Explain that.
It's basically the idea that a legend kind of becomes real in the eyes of the community when physical evidence pops up. Even if the evidence is circumstantial or could be interpreted different ways, if it seems to confirm the story.
It makes the legend real.
Exactly. It instantiates it. So finding these things in the farmhouse, the drawings, those claw marks, the tiny cages, it didn't just add fuel to the fire. It was like a horrifying validation for the community. Their worst fears confirmed. It turned the child-eating man from maybe a possibility into this chilling story backed up by actual, physical, deeply disturbing stuff. It just jumps beyond storytelling into perceived reality. The terror wasn't just in the words anymore. It was in these physical spaces that seemed to scream the legend was true. And that's terrifying, whether or not they ever found the person responsible. It's the horror of finding the evidence of the monster, even without the monster itself.
And that leads to maybe the most disturbing part of this whole thing.
Okay.
The part that makes it last. Because despite finding all this, despite the physical proof that something truly awful happened in that farmhouse,
Yeah.
our sources, the police files, the local histories, they're clear. The man was never caught.
Never caught.
Never caught. Think about what that does to a town. You have the proof, it confirms your worst nightmares, but the source of it vanished. Gone. Just leaving this open wound that never really closes.
An unresolved horror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that lack of resolution, that's why the legend of the child-eating man is still around today. It's like it's woven into the town itself.
That's still active.
Still active.
Yeah.
Our interviews, the oral histories, they show people still talk about it. Like if you go too far into those specific woods at night, they say you'll hear it. the sound of a sack being dragged across the ground.
Oh, chills.
Right. And faint cries. Children crying inside the sack. It's not treated like ancient history. It feels like an ongoing threat. And the warnings parents give, they're not just vague, be carefuls. They're specific instructions passed down generation to generation. Parents today still tell their kids, don't stay out after dark. Don't follow any voice you hear in the woods, or the child-eating man will take you. The safe places to play, where kids can go.
Yeah.
It's still defined by the shadow of this guy they never caught. It shapes their whole world, their sense of safety.
And that raises such a crucial question, doesn't it? Something our sociological studies on community trauma really get into. How does that unresolved nature, the fact that it's still hanging there, shape a community's collective mind? And the stories they tell their kids.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that he wasn't caught means the danger didn't end. It just retreated, went back into the shadows. So it becomes this ever-present threat, not just something that happened way back when.
Always lurking.
Always lurking. Especially when you think about the landscape itself. Those woods aren't just trees anymore, are they? They become loaded with this sense of danger. They mark a boundary between what's safe and what's unknown, what's potentially monstrous. And beyond that, the legend itself acts as this powerful story of trauma passed down through generations. It carries not just the narrative, but the fear itself, the caution. Our sources suggest these warnings do a few things. They're practical, trying to keep kids safe from whatever dangers might be out there.
Makes sense.
They also reinforce a sense of community identity, bonded by this shared tragic history, and they give people a way to frame ongoing anxieties. So the child-eating man ends up being this sort of symbolic guardian of the town's boundaries, a constant reminder of vulnerability, and this echo of a trauma that, for a lot of people, feels terrifyingly unfinished. It's a really stark example of how an open wound in a community's past can just stay open, manifesting as this living legend that shapes everyday life year after year.
So we've really walked through this chilling legend, the child-eating man, drawing on all these different sources we have. We started with those unexplained disappearances back in the 70s in rural Pennsylvania, how they just plunged the community into fear.
Right, the initial terror.
Then we looked at how that fear took shape, how it crystallized into this really specific, terrifying image of the man himself, the gaunt figure, the sack, details that just burned him into memory.
The memorable, horrific details.
Then we got to the farmhouse. The incredibly disturbing physical evidence, the drawings, the claw marks, those tiny cages, and how our sources show the discovery shifted everything, making the legend feel terrifyingly real for people.
The shift to perceived reality.
And finally, maybe the most important piece for its longevity, the fact that he was never caught, which means the legend isn't just a story, it's an active warning that persists today.
The unresolved ending.
Exactly. It's a story that feels designed not just to scare you, but to actually change how you act, how you see the world around you. So, after digging into all these sources on the child-eating man, we see this path. Disappearances birth a legend, vivid details make it stick, unsettling evidence makes it feel real, and an uncaught monster keeps it alive. But the big question our sources really seem to pose isn't just, do you believe in him? It's more like, what does this specific legend, this blend of horror and lack of closure, tell us about how communities cope, or maybe don't cope, with trauma they can't explain?
Yeah, and I think ultimately, whether you see the child-eating man as a real person or pure folklore, these kinds of legends function as really potent cultural artifacts. They're definitely more than just stories. They act as serious warnings. They reflect these really deep societal fears, anxieties about vulnerability, especially when a community faces something horrific that just doesn't get solved. Our sources really lay out how these narratives become tools, ways to process the absolute worst possibilities, ways to draw lines both physical and moral within the community. They basically map the local landscape with this story of shared vigilance and caution that just endures.
Absolutely. Because sometimes, like our sources here really suggest, legends aren't just echoes from the past, they're ongoing warnings. Warnings that are actively shaping the present. And that's definitely something to think about. The next time you hear a local ghost story or some chilling tale whispered in your own community, what deep of fear, what lingering question might it actually be trying to tell you? And how is it still shaping the world right around you?